Welcome to the second episode of Hammered with Cars, presented by Troll Patrol Racing. I'm TJ, and this is Tyler. Um, and tonight we're just gonna kind of go over a few things that we think are relevant with the upcoming race season, and kind of go from there. So I guess the first thing is really the 200 treadwear tires, because
Always a hot ticket item in the autocross and racing community.
for
Track
sure,
days, stuff like that.
which we've got some pretty, I don't want to say change. Well, I guess that is big
There
changes.
actually is a lot of big changes in the 200 treadwear category for tires this year. A lot of new products coming out that were a little bit unexpected because
Right.
it's kind of been just controlled by 2 or 3 different tire manufacturers.
Right. And I guess let's start off with tires that don't matter this year.
Tires that don't matter.
Yep, tires that don't matter,
we talking
because that's
about
what everyone is gonna.
Are we talking about tires that just simply aren't available, or are we talking about tires that don't matter because they're no longer a top tier tire?
A little bit of both. I'm not even gonna. I wouldn't say they were top tier. Maybe they were top tier like 10 years ago.
Right.
So there's the biggest one is the Potenza RE71R, and that one is basically because they've stopped production on it.
Right. No,
and
that's fair. I mean, it's still a relevant tire because it's still moderately competitive. You know, it hasn't been dramatically outclassed by the new stuff that's come to the market. But the cut in production does put
right.
serious.
Well, I was gonna
on the
say
situation.
it's whether you can find it, and then for like SCCA, well, I guess even depending on how rigid your regional event is, which I don't think many people would be too rigid about it, but certainly for nationals, is my guess is by the time nationals rolls around, it will no longer be a viable tire option simply because it won't
production
have enough
numbers aren't high enough that they can actually count it because
Right.
it's not a readily available
Right.
option.
And so the Potenza RE71R, which there's the RE71RS, which has come out in Japan, but we're not seeing it in the States.
We're still playing the waiting game.
I don't think we will see it in the States.
Ever or just?
I don't
this
think
season?
we ever will. I don't. There was a couple like reviews from Japan, and it wasn't like it was like, oh yeah, it's this amazing new tire. And this was like a year ago when I found these reviews when they first
Sure.
kind of announced it. The other part of it is I think is with everything going on, there's material allocations, and Bridgestone is one of the big tire manufacturers you see doing OEM tires.
Sure.
And so I think
Naturally,
especially
that's going to be their main focus because that's what makes them money.
right. And I think it was that and the fact that you have so many new tires coming out that are competitive with the RE71R. It's not really worth it because even if you are still competitive, people are going to go away from what has been the
Right.
staple to try and find
Yep.
that next edge.
You know, it's one thing to continue production on a tire where you have 60 to 70% of the market share because you are the dominant tire.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, when your market share gets cut down to 30%,
Right.
it's no longer something that you need to pump a bunch of resources into because your production numbers are going to go down dramatically because of demand.
And maybe someone else out there knows more about exactly why they're not doing it, but that's just kind of my speculation is that
Sure.
they're focusing on standard production, especially if they are on a material allocation, which everyone is right now, just
Right.
with steel going up and everything. It's just crazy. So the RE71R is kind of the big one. The other tires that don't really matter are the Dunlop Z3, which never mattered. Even when it came out, it never mattered because it just didn't.
It just didn't perform.
No, it didn't. It didn't perform. The Nexen Farah Surf4 G, which I don't think was too bad, but you really can't.
I've heard decent reviews on it. Great for track days. Okay for autocross.
Right. Maybe they've got more sizes up on here on a specific tire site that everyone uses.
Well, it does look like they offer a fair amount of sizes, but
nothing. They don't do anything crazy. I mean, they've got only up to 255 and
most
18.
people would consider a big boy size.
Right? Yeah, it's
like
only.
you said, it's capped out at a 255. It doesn't even get to a 275, let alone a 300 series.
And it wasn't too bad of a tire, but it still was considered not as good as the. Wow, that's really articulate. It wasn't considered to be as well performing as the RE71Rs.
Right.
Other tires that don't matter, the Hankook RS4, which I know people love for its durability.
I was going to say there again, track days. But
I hated it.
Limited sizes.
I never understood it. It had great durability, but then as soon as you got in the rain, I know we saw a couple of people. Yeah, they were, or worse.
Yeah.
The Yokohama, was it the AO 48 or whatever? Their old tire, obviously.
Sure.
That's no longer really relevant. That hasn't been relevant for a while. The Nitto NT05 and Maxxis VR1, which I wasn't sure about. I knew they were older tires, but I kind of asked around on Sloppy Mechanics and Track Midwest what people's opinions were on it, specifically because I was trying to get a 295 Federal 295 Federal 595 RSRR, but the one place that I found that was actually selling them, by the time I got a hold of them, they only had 2 tires left, and they said they wouldn't have any more till June.
Sure.
So I was trying to look for something a little bit more budget-oriented as far as a 295 size, because those Federals, they were selling them for $660 a set.
Which is blindingly inexpensive.
Yes, it's half the price of everyone else, and the next tier up is still $1,000 for a set. Mm-hmm. And so I was asking about the NT05s and the VR1s on Track Midwest and Sloppy Mechanics, simply because I figured there'd be more experience there. And basically, what I got from it, even though no one directly said it's worse than the Federal, it was basically it sounded like, from as much tone as you can get from Facebook comments, people would have rather ran the Federal compared to the NT05.
Yeah, I mean the NT05 has been out for a really long time.
Same with the VR1.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the
release date
introduction date was on either of those tires, but I do know that they're both older technology, and not that the 595 RSRR is a brand new tire or anything like that, but it's shockingly good for its price.
Well, and I think it's one of those things too. You look at it, you try to look at it from purely a performance standpoint, and maybe they're equal, but at the same time, if they're equal, then you would get the Federals because they're half the price,
right? And
it's not like they wear crazy fast or anything like that.
No, at least from our experience, actually, the 595 RSRR.
Oh my God!
Actually has really good wear characteristics.
There's on an RX8 forum post going back to February 26, 2009.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty old tire. That hasn't mattered for
12 years.
Right. That hasn't mattered for a long time.
Yeah.
Some of the new tires. I guess I wouldn't call it new. The AO52 that everyone kind of gravitated towards, especially for SCCA Nationals in 2019. So you saw a lot of those this year. The RT660 is obviously a big one people are looking at, which appears to run pretty wide. The Rival S1.5, again, is another one. Has a pretty common staple that you see in clubs. The Kumo V730,
quote unquote, the cheater tire.
Yes, everyone is
the
saying
ACR tire that was offered in extremely limited sizes. Well, this is supposed to be basically an equivalent to that tire.
Not limited sizes.
For an ACR? It was just one size, right?
It was 2 sizes.
2 sizes?
It was 315 for the fronts of a Dodge Viper and 335 for the rear of a Dodge Viper.
It's pretty limited.
But they're specific to the Dodge Viper. Right. So it'll be interesting to see where that comes in. As you know, I was actually in my search looking for tires, I was debating between 295 and 285, and I was looking at 285 to maybe just get a little bit more variety in tire selection and brand selection, and I saw the Kumos pop up, and I got really excited because they were about $800 for a set, and then I realized it was the 720s.
Oh, yep.
Which was a bummer.
Which, not to say that they're a horrible tire, but they're kind of in that same bucket as those NT05s and the
they're a little
Nexons that you're talking about. They're just kind of an outdated tire.
Right, they're a little outdated. I do, if I remember correctly, in the tire dealer site that shall not be mentioned, but that a lot of people use, they did a test review, and in their 29-second test run that they do or whatever, it was only like a tenth behind the RE71R when they tested it. Now I know they had delamination issues with the 720, but I'm not exactly sure what caused that, because we had a buddy who also ran them, and they never really had any issues with them. So I don't know if there was a revision there.
Until they switched them to a front-wheel drive car. On the rear-wheel drive car, they didn't have any problems.
So then it probably was just camber gain, because he didn't have the control arms on
he didn't have the control arms and the updated geometry on that SRT4,
right.
And it ate the outside shoulders off them tires.
Right. So another tire that is kind of new to last year, this year, the Federal 595 RS Pro, which unfortunately is, they've got a lot of sizes, but it's more limited than their RSRR tire. And then another big one that everyone has been kind of interested in is the Nankang CR1, which looks a lot like the AO52, which the AO52 looks a lot like the 720 and 730 of Kumo.
Which the Nankang CR1 is actually the tire that was on the car that won King of the Mountain.
Right, correct. Was he running them at King of the Mountain? Okay,
yep.
I know he did some testing after King of the Mountain.
Yep.
And comparing it to the AO52, and they thought it was maybe just a little bit better. And their testing was over 2 days, but they looked at not only their times, but as well as other competitors' times to account for any variation, because I think they had a little bit higher temps the second day, so people seem to be running a little bit faster.
Sure.
So yeah, those are the big ones out there. Some of the stuff I've seen with the Falcons is they seem to run very large.
Yeah.
One of the things I found when I was looking at all these different sizes, I started looking at 285s to see if I could run a 285 or could find something that I'd like in a 285. And the 285 3018 for the RT660 is nearly identical. I believe it's just the... Oops, that's the wrong one. I believe it's just the section width for the 295 RT660. I think it's 0.1 inch less than what a 295 A7 is supposed to be on the same... I better check that if it's the same wheel width.
Sure. That being said, being so close to the next size up in a slick is really actually quite impressive, because generally speaking, slicks typically run significantly wider than their street-based counterparts.
Right, so it's on a 10-inch rim. I can't remember what they did. I think they do a 10.5-inch rim for the 295 A7.
Sure.
So even it was tread width. That's what it was. Tread width was 10.7 on the RT660, and it's 10.8 on the 295 A7. So you put that on I guess that's not going to change tread width too much.
No.
Change your section width.
Correct.
So that's kind of interesting, as I've been seeing a lot of Miata owners who are running 15 by 10 wheels, getting the 245s, and having them fit in looks like they fit pretty well and has given them some meat. I know the Hankook was kind of the go-to because they're one of the only ones that had a 245.
Sure.
Actually, the BF Goodrich might have had a 245 if I remember correctly. Yeah, the BF Goodrich had a 245, but I know the BF Goodrich was quite a bit more expensive and obviously didn't last as long as the RS4. So it'll be kind of interesting to see where this goes, and
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, Nationals happens this year, unlike last year,
right?
Because you get a really good mix of cars. I mean, even with the AO52 kind of looking like it was coming out on top of the RE71R, you still had a lot of competitors showing up to Nationals with the RE71R.
Because it's tried and true.
Right. And I'm sure that's why quite a few people stuck with it. Especially since that tire came out in like I think it came out in the fall of 2016 because I ran it in 2017.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure you have a tire that's from 2017. You spent all that time developing your suspension and tuning for it and stuff. So
yeah, that's something that I was going to say is that when you get to a competitive on a national level, you're tuning your car to your tires just as much as you're tuning your car in general.
Right.
So
right.
You switch your tires. Like for example, the things that the Troll Patrol has been doing with shock dynoing and getting a car as fine tuned as is reasonable.
Right.
Or without diving into a professional level budget.
Right.
When you start getting into that type of fine tuning, you switch tires, and all of a sudden you have to change up the way that your suspension is set up.
Right. I mean, you can have different
because, like Ryan, for example, that's been part of his tuning process on his SRT4s. He even built an apparatus to be able to check the spring rate on the tires.
Right.
If you switch tires, your spring rate changes on your
tires.
Right.
And like for my car, we didn't have I don't have a tire picked out yet. So for the little suspension changes we made to the rear, we just used the spring rates he had because it's better than nothing.
Right.
And it should be relatively close.
Yep.
But that's definitely something where I could see, especially like when you compare the Falcon RT660 to the RE71R, the 285 measurements are so far off. The tread width is about a half-inch difference.
Right. So
I don't know if that and the 285 is a 30. Now the 295 goes up to a 40. And I'm talking about sidewall. Yeah, yep. And but to have that much of a difference in tread width on the same size tire, I mean, we all know that some tire manufacturers say 285 or say it's 200 tread wear and then exaggerate exactly what that number is.
Right.
So will those sidewalls be a little bit mushier because you're ballooning that tire essentially? It's going to be interesting to see what people do this year to kind of figure out what's going to be best. But I'm intrigued to see the AO52, the RT660, and the CR1 because I think we'll see those three compete pretty heavily at something like SCCA Nationals. And even like at Optima and stuff, you'll probably see the Yokohama, the BF Goodrich. I guess even the CR1, they got pretty wide sizes too, don't they? Yeah, they even got 325s and a 20-inch.
Which is what a lot of high performance cars like.
But they've got
Camaros and Corvettes and things like that.
Right,
come with 20
right. They've got a 315 and the 18, right? End of February. So we're in March right now.
Yep.
So they've got some. That's going to be pretty interesting or pretty cool, just because you're not going to see it in just STX or just STR. You're going to see it kind of hopefully across the entire class selection for something like SCCA.
Yep. And it'll be interesting to see how things pan out with having such a wide array of tires available that could be top tier competitive. going into nationals because was it 2 years ago now you did the tire comparison for what podium positions?
Yeah, I did.
You know, you still might have a lot of people that will place podiums on RE71Rs just simply because they have them left over from if it's allowed. But you know, because they stick with it because it's tried and true. They use it because their car is set up for it.
I don't
But
think...
the thing is the big variable there that we had talked about when you did that little mini study was that this doesn't necessarily prove that RE71Rs was the fastest tire available.
Right.
It's kind of anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It could just simply be that the people who placed on podiums have the driver mod.
Right.
And it didn't almost matter what tire they ran, they would have placed the same.
Yeah. No, I don't think you'll see anyone still using the RE7R, partially because of real reasons. But my guess is last year everyone was trying to figure out what tire they wanted to run next. And yeah, the CR1 is a pretty new tire, but they may have played all of last season with the AO52, and they're not going to change up from it necessarily.
Right.
Now the CR1, it doesn't look... Yeah, I guess I haven't looked at... Well, I don't have measurements for the CR1 like is readily available for like the Yokohama and the RE7R and BF Goodrich, but you know, I don't see with how close they are, and unless you get some breakthrough evidence from some early events, I don't see people switching if they spent all last year. Yeah. If you spent all last year kind of developing the AO52, you're probably going to stick with it this year, even if you have to buy a set every event.
yeah, I have heard some pretty adverse comments about their wear characteristics, suggesting that they do not last very long. Like I've even heard people question whether or not they last as long as A7s.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, you have you still got the 595 RSRRs from last year that are still good. Do you think you're gonna be? I know you've got it one set, and you're potentially gonna have two cars this year with the Corvette and the S10.
Yep. There's a really good chance that, because I typically run my race program currently on a pretty tight budget.
Who doesn't?
that those will go on the S10. I don't remember if we talked about it on episode 1 or not, but I had attempted to put the C5 brakes on the C4 Corvette, and
I don't think we talked about it.
I don't think we did.
Yep.
So I had attempted to retrofit a set of C5 front brakes, caliper and rotors, onto the C4, which was all good in theory, and they fit with most 17-inch rims. Turns out they don't fit with
the
my
exception is the ones you have.
The inside of the barrel where they meet up to the spokes was just too small in diameter, and they would not fit.
Was it the inside diameter, or was it really the spokes?
It was the inside diameter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we thought that it was the spokes, and that's why we stacked up like
that's
spacers
right.
to try and make them fit.
Yep.
But it actually ended up being the inside diameter.
Thank you, Nathan, for the spacers.
Yeah,
I still have them. I need to get them back to you.
So how that's different from my S10 is because with those particular wheels, I actually have to run a 3-inch wheel spacer.
You guys are gonna love that, aren't you?
It's a 3-inch wheel spacer to be able to run those wheels on the S10.
Right.
So needless to say, the way that the barrel expands out towards the actual inner lip of the wheel, they will fit over the C5 brakes on the S10. So when I update the S10 to the C5 brakes, those wheels will fit fine. So those 17-inch wheels with the 255 Federals will go on the S10. But then I also got a set of 18-inch wheels that would go on the Corvette. Yeah, thank you. That's a great deal that you found me.
I know.
So,
and
there again, because
18 by what?
18 by 9.5, I believe.
Okay.
Yep.
So you could run a 275.
Yep, I absolutely could run a 275. So, and then that leads me to what will I elect to put on there. If I can find a screaming deal on something else, I might try something else. But there again, just because my race program is currently run on a pretty tight budget, there's a really good chance that I'll just go with a 275 Federal 595 RSRR.
Are you gonna mix it up, test something new?
Not this year, because the thing is
I guess if you switch between car and car, you won't have to worry about the tires necessarily feeling different.
Right. And the thing is with the Corvette is, as of right now, it's completely, chassis-wise, it's completely 100% bone stock.
Right.
It's the original OEM bushings from 87.
86.
86. And,
which makes it actually 85.
Right. And it just has Monroe sense of track shocks on it. So,
right.
Any money that I can save on what is considered a consumable, where that is not at all the biggest link in that car's performance right now, I can reallocate those saved funds towards chassis development.
If you were... You could try something like the Kumo V720s. I don't even...
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I would be disappointed if I put V720s on it.
Get the V730s and just stretch it to 225.
Yeah. No, I don't think that I will.
No, I don't think I will.
Yeah. Nah, I've got to have at least a 255 to go on that car because that's what I ran last year, and it was adequate. But
right.
That platform.
You're talking about like from a grip standpoint,
right?
Yeah.
But that platform will actually accept up to a 315 with no sort of body mods or chassis mods.
Right.
So it would be super foolish for me to go anything less than that.
They don't have the sizes on here. I thought they had the sizes here on Federal's
I thought they did
website.
Too, but I see that they're not there for the RS
but I want to say they go up to a 265. I don't know if they do 275 595 RS Pro, because that'd be the other one to try, because they're a little bit more expensive, but not hardly as nowhere near
as expensive as
yeah. And a 265 on a 9.5. I mean, obviously 275 would be great, but because this is just on Amazon, $161 a tire. Even says rim width 9.5. Oh yeah, that's right. I guess that's right. I was running 265s on 9-inch, but that's right. They're recommended for 9.5. So you could easily get away with those as well.
Sure.
And that would maybe be worth trying. I know Ryan seems to like them on his SRT4. I don't know if... I haven't seen any comparison videos comparing them to the 595 RSRR.
Right.
And I don't know if they're... I think the biggest change a tire manufacturer can make is compound change.
Mm-hmm.
More than tread design. They obviously did a different tread design, but I don't think it really... I mean, it does add, obviously, some advantages. I mean, that's why the RE7R, the RT660, the Dunlop Z2 Star Spec, they all look identical, and even the Nexen.
Yeah.
And Federal kind of followed in that line.
With the RS Pro.
Yeah, with the RS Pro.
Yeah.
So there's obviously something to be said for the tread design, but I think the biggest thing is the tread compound. And I feel like the tread design ends up being more relevant to driving style. At least that's what it kind of seemed like with
Sure.
The RE7R and the rival tests that, were happening back in 2017 and 2018, is they'd stick 3 different guys in, 2 Miatas and then test those 2 tires. Right. And the guy that was used to running the rivals and had his car set up for the rivals was fastest on rivals, and the guy that was used to running the RE7Rs, was faster on the RE7Rs.
Right.
But their times were comparable when they were in the car that they were comfortable with.
Sure.
So I think it just ends up coming down to driver style, relatively speaking. Obviously, You
Yeah,
can't
obviously speaking, if
you can't have huge gaps in a tire and then expect
right,
it's gonna.
if two different tires, have a 1.5 second gap on a 60-second course,
Right.
for the same driver, one of those tires is clearly lacking.
Right.
But if there is 0.3 of a second
Right.
gap between two tires on the same car with
Yep.
one driver, it's pretty kind of arguable that
It's
just what the driver's comfortable
Right.
with and how that specific tire
depending on the length of
handles
the track.
Right.
You have a 15-second run.
Well, yeah, but generally speaking, that's not.
Which I hope there's no one out there only getting 15-second runs.
Yeah. Not that it couldn't be a really exciting track.
It would be a slalom.
Probably.
That's all it would be.
So actually, it looks like the 595 RS Pro. There may be limited quantities, but they are available in a 275 on an 18.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's 2 tires. Yeah, 2 tires for
Yep.
$350, so $700.
$700 really isn't too bad.
The other thing is, like we were talking about, you could try the V720. You could also do the 516K Plus from Falcon.
Right, and those aren't really a top tier tire anymore, but they're not bad either.
They were never really a top tier tire. Because
they
the
had their
615K was when
They
it first
had their
came out,
place.
but the Plus was just a compound change, but it wasn't really a good enough compound change. They had their place in the sense that they had huge tire sizes right out of the box.
Right, that's what I was going to say,
Right.
was that what they actually did really well compared to other brands is that they worked really good on heavy cars and muscle cars that required big boy sizes, quote unquote, like 315s and 335s
Right.
and 335s.
Yeah, because they were one of the few ones that actually offered a 335, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, they only got the 315 for the RT660.
There's another tire that's
So small.
arguably becoming rapidly outdated is Nitto NTO1s.
Oh, really?
They're below a 200 tread wear. They're
Right, they're 100 tread wear.
They're
And
100
I guess
tire.
I don't...
But the thing is the top tier 200 tread wear tires are very rapidly approaching the same lap times as the NTO1,
I would say they're faster.
which means that
From
it's even
the-
less relevant.
It's a difference of application because the 200 tread wear tire is gonna be, it should be pretty quick out of the box, take a little heat, and then it really comes into its grip, which is why everyone uses it for autocross. And then you'll see people transition over to a 100 tread wear tire when they're strictly doing HPDE or something like that, if they're not class limited, because like the Toyo R888R, the testing that I've seen is they found it comparable to the RE71R, but it took a little bit more time to get up to that optimal point, but once it got there, it stayed there where the RE71R got greasy, which you can even feel the RE71R get greasy on a hot enough day.
Right. Which more or less just goes to prove that the whole entire tread wear rating
It's hot
is
garbage.
just kind of a spoof. Because in no way, shape, or form should a 100 tread wear tire take longer to get up to temperature than a 200 tread wear tire. A 100 tread wear tire should heat up faster and be stickier quicker and just have overall higher grip levels. But if it wears out, tread wear rating program or process is so ambiguous. It's left up to each manufacturer to have to define their standardized tire that they use as a baseline. And it goes from there.
Right.
So their baseline can be infinitely variable, and technically, because of the way the system works, if you just make your tread depth deeper before it gets down to the wear bars,
it's a percentage.
I'm
pretty sure it's a percentage.
But if it is a percentage, then that just means that if your tread depth is deeper, you can go down more 30/2 of an inch to maintain before you hit the same percentage mark.
Right. I'm not sure. I feel like
Regardless of
I'd
what
have
the
to
exact
look at
system
it.
is, we all know it's screwy.
Yes, it obviously has some leniency in it, which is perfect. I mean, that's what drives the competition of the tuner and treader tires. I mean, look at where we're at in 2018 and not so much 2019. 2019 is when we kind of started to see other tire manufacturers come back, but 2018, 2017, it was the rivals or the RE71R, and pretty much everyone had standardized with the RE71R.
Right.
That's just what people were running.
Yeah.
Except for us, we went to Federals.
We're rebels.
Because we're cheap.
Yeah, well, I tell you what. Cheap worked out actually pretty well for us. Because there again, it could be driver mod, it could be chassis competency compared to other vehicles on the track. But, and given, I understand that it's just a local event, so maybe the concentration of talent isn't as high as if you go to a national or a regional level event.
Right.
And that's not saying anything bad about the people that are at a local event.
Right.
But it generally just is a lower concentration of overall talent. But us and our ragtag vehicles with our outlaw tires, we're overall placed really pretty highly.
Right.
In our local event.
No, they're definitely. I mean,
they seem very competent for what they are.
Right. It's one of the go-to tires I suggest, especially for someone who's just getting into it, because it's a budget tire, and I mean I know and that's Ryan bought the Hankook RS3 as his first 200 treadwear tire, version 2, and the whole reason he bought it is it competed fairly well, and it was affordable. I don't know exactly what his affordable was at that time,
right.
But that was
if it was his first set of 200 treadwear tires. There's going to be a sticker shock there, so it legitimately had to be fairly inexpensive,
right?
Because Ryan's a pretty level-headed person, and he's not going to just go spend all the chips on a set of 200 treadwear tires on year one, when he recognizes that he has driver development and chassis development to work on before tires are his limiting factor.
Right. I think you should get the Yokohamas.
I don't think I should.
Or the Nankings. I would like to see. I think we could get some good diversity in our group. See, they've got a 275 and a 265.
Whether or not this information has ever been divulged before, but I'm not really prepared to spend more money for a set of tires than I paid for the whole car. Fair point.
But you're going to do that in 2 seasons regardless.
Yeah.
So just do it in 1.
Like I said, I'm 100% aware that I have tons of chassis development that I have to work on on that Corvette before I worry about tires being the limiting factor. And just personally, I recognize that I have a lot of driver development to work on. I do a pretty good job of making half a dozen events every season. But before I feel that tires are going to be my limiting factor, I definitely have a lot of work to do on myself first.
Right. So. The reason I think you should get the AO52s, though, is because we've got Ryan on the pros.
Yep.
We've all driven on the 595s. Not that they're really a comparable.
The RSRRs?
Yeah, sorry. Yep, the RSRRs. Kyle in his Z31, he's going to be running the RT660, it sounds like. And then I'm in between the RT660. But if Kyle was going to run the RT660, I think I'd try to find something else. If Kumo came out with larger sizes in time, I would try the Kumo or one other brand that's undisclosed.
An unnamed brand
that I believe I am actually going to do. But I want to weight.
Is it the Kenda Kaiser?
Yes. No. The Kenda Kaiser.
Fantastic drift tire, from what I hear.
That's great.
Yep, highly adequate grip levels and wear like iron.
Yep. Can you hear how much I care in the tone of my voice?
No. Well, that's a tire that I'll have to propose to Reed since he wants to.
There you go. Yep. And he needs new tires since he left his tires on his car all winter.
Yes, indeed. RSRRs were pretty good anyways, and all he's done is just harden them so that they'll last longer at drift events.
They will, because that's what I did with mine last year after I'd driven on them for 2 years, and I just kind of was like, whatever. My car was breaking down so much at that point. I was beyond the point of, yep, my tires are the thing I need to take care of.
Your level of caring was
yes,
no longer high.
Yes. And so I just left them on the car, and actually it was interesting. You could tell I was struggling at some of the autocrosses, and then I went to a high-speed autocross HPD event that we do with Midwestern Council of Sports Car Club. And the amount of heat that those things were holding on to, and you just come off the track, and it would just, it didn't look like you had a tire, it just looked like you had a gravel tire, like a tire made of gravel. It was just insane. So, not that that was a good thing necessarily. I'm sure they weren't as grippy as they could have been.
But you knew they could take the heat anyways.
Right. I was not worried about my tires that day. I was more worried about my brakes, honestly.
Yep. Which you're doing an upgrade for brakes this year, correct?
Yep. So I'm taking the, well, I might as well vent a little bit right now with this because I've got the stock 1986 Nissan Z31 brakes on there. I've been running slotted and drilled rotors, which I'm not going to... When I ran slotted and drilled rotors from Stop Tech, they did really well on holding up. And then this other brand, I'm not going to say their name because I don't know if I can say their name. It cracked, but it didn't crack where it was drilled. It just cracked in a regular place.
In between the drilled holes?
Yeah.
Not
like it didn't go through a drilled hole. It was about as it was in between two holes, about as far as you possibly
that's highly unfortunate.
Right, and I was like, well, I'm never buying rotors from these guys again, you know. But I thought I was having some brake fade issues, and I'm not sure if it was brake fade issues or I think I did have brake fade issues, and then later on in the day I wasn't having brake fade issues, but I thought I was, and it was really just kind of play with the brake booster.
Sure.
And I think it just kind of got in my head, and so I'd come off a session, I'd bleed the brakes, and that way I wasn't, running into the rear end with my 1986 300ZX into a GT350. And
one of those people will be on losing it, and that's not you.
Sorry, buddy. But then this year I'm going to upgrade to Z32 front calipers, aluminum, not the iron, and Z32 rear calipers, and it adds a little bit in the rotor diameter, but the biggest thing is the thickness that it adds.
Just more heat dissipation,
right?
And especially having aluminum calipers, that'll dissipate the heat a lot better.
Right.
You don't have to worry about.
Well, we were trying to get the bolts out to rebuild them, and my brother has one of those inductive coil things, so it's supposed to you can just heat up, and my brother's like, it'll get red hot, and the aluminum caliper was dissipating the heat so fast we actually couldn't get it hot enough to break it loose, and so we had to use an acetylene torch to get it hot enough. And at that point it started boiling brake fluid out of them and everything.
You'll have that,
right? But we got it rebuilt and everything, but they can dissipate a serious amount of heat. So I may run some ducting this year to try and help things. We'll just kind of see how much time I have, I may go to the first event and just run it the way it is and see how it goes.
Which at an autocross, it's not going to be a big deal.
No, autocross
the HPDEs and the high
and
autocrosses.
That's one of the things that bothers me is you see a lot of people will upgrade their Z31 brakes to a Z32 brake and then leave some 500, 600 treadwear all-season tire on the car, and it's like
unnecessary.
It's like no.
You would have to do so many maximum effort braking events back to back.
Yep.
That you'd be liable to have something else fail before your brakes.
Your tires would.
No, for sure. But I'm just saying that with such an extreme lack in grip, you have to do it so many times over and over again, you'd be liable to run into overheating issues.
It drives me nuts. And some people do it because of the looks. I mean, the nice thing, or one of the cool things about swapping over the Z32 brakes is it still says Nissan on the side and stuff. So there's definitely that attraction to it. But just you'll see some guys do it, and then they'll talk about how much more braking they have, and it's like,
but you don't actually know.
Like, you might have more braking because now you put a good caliper on, or you flushed fluid, and and you put decent pads on there. If you're running some generic auto parts store brand brake pad, it's not going to lock up great. But if you put some EBC yellows on there, and I mean, you can throw 295 slicks on there and still be able to brake, at least for autocross.
Yep.
You're more than capable to pull away from it. Now, I know there's something to, how do I want to word this? Wow, this is not the pedal feel. I mean, I guess it's kind of the pedal feel. With something that small, your braking can go from nothing to all of it at once kind of thing. So there's a little bit more buildup, I guess. You can get a little bit more buildup with those larger brake calipers. So there's something, I guess, that could
just have better modulation.
There you go. That's what I was thinking of, modulation.
Yep. I mean,
you got better modulation. And
if you increase your piston diameter and your overall piston volume on your brake caliper, but you leave your master cylinder the same, you have a higher multiplication of pressure.
Right.
So it's going to give you more modulation because you have to push the pedal farther to move the pistons on the caliper the same distance.
Right.
So it's going to give you a greater braking force, but it also has better modulation.
Right.
Yes, you have to travel a larger distance to create the same braking force, but you overall get more braking force and better modulation.
Now, I did swap over to a larger master cylinder.
Sure.
To match with that. And what I've kind of seen from that is you can get away with street driving on it, no problem. But if you're going to do some heavy track driving, you need to go to the Z32 style master cylinder.
Yep.
Just to help with capacity.
Absolutely.
So that's
another thing that's oftentimes very overlooked, specifically on older cars. We're in 2021 now, so
I know
older cars, especially if they've never had a brake system flush or anything like that.
Right.
You get back into a car that's even a 2000 now. That brake fluid in there might be 20 years old.
Right. Jesus Christ. Oh God.
So you've got cars out there that are 20 to 30 to 40 years old that people are busting out of the weeds and taking to the racetrack for the first time, and that fluid is so contaminated with moisture.
It'll just it just soaks up moisture.
So even before you boil your fluid, you have sponginess in the brake field just because your seals aren't sealing correctly.
Right.
They're dry rotted. The water in the fluid itself just doesn't have the same compression characteristics as brake fluid itself.
Right.
You run into a lot of problems.
Yep.
And then you've got half rusted rotors and pads that have been in the car for 4 years because a person doesn't put a lot of miles on and they're just kind of glazed over.
Right.
All of those things all add up. And then to compound it, you've got factory rubber lines that are 20, 30 years old.
Yeah.
And they're just deteriorated.
And
they flex so much.
I think
swapping over to a braided stainless
line. Right. I think that's one of the biggest
things
I noticed between my Z31 and Kyle's Z31 he has an 87, so mine's an 86, his is an 87, almost identical, or I guess you could say similar as far as brakes. There's a few different things. His was a dual piston compared to my single piston, front calipers and stuff. But I actually thought my brakes felt better, and I think it has to do with the hoses. Because he still has rubber hoses on it, and I've got the stainless steel lines. His felt softer.
Yep. That's what stainless lines are supposed to do, is just make them feel so much more responsive. Mm-hmm. You don't have that initial swelling that takes up a bunch of volume before the pressure actually maintains inside the caliper.
Right.
Which that's actually something that I got for my C4 Corvette when I got the brackets and stuff for the brake upgrade. The guy that I got them from also had a set of stainless steel lines, so I grabbed those at the same time. It's like, if I'm going to have the system open, might as well just do it all at once and just have it done.
Right.
And I'm really, really excited to see how the brakes pan out on that car, because my S10, surprisingly, actually stops really good. It has a super responsive brake pedal.
Well, it's only got 90 horsepower.
No. I understand that. But I'm not talking about brake balance, brake
It's like a Miata. Balance. You try not to touch the brakes as much as possible.
Well, when you do use the brakes, they're responsive. Like, you don't have to push the pedal hard. In the Corvette, that thing is kind of era where power brakes, they're better than manual brakes, but they're not like modern power brakes where it's just a super light feel. You really got to put some serious muscle into the brakes on that car to make them work. And
are you sure your brake booster's working properly?
Yeah. Okay. I legitimately think, because I never did anything with the brakes on that car. So
we bled them.
We bled them. But aside from that, nothing. I have no idea how old those pads are. No idea how old those rotors are. Those rubber hoses.
Too old because
definitely too old.
You know it's bad when you go out for an autocross run and all you can smell is brake.
Right. When you go on an autocross course and you can smell the brakes, you know they're not good.
On a stock C4, I should clarify. I'm sure if something much more significant and
in horsepower, it would make more sense. But it's nothing to get real excited about for horsepower.
Yeah.
So I'm just really excited to see how the brakes...
It's slower than my Z31.
Beyond 60 miles an hour, that is very true. I think if we went from a dig, because you got to wait for a turbo to spool up, and I just have maximum torque at 2,000 RPMs.
Well, it was slower.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
But, I'm upgrading to the C5 brakes in the front and doing the G-lock pads all the way around. I really think that's going to be a good braking setup for that car.
Right. I know I got to figure out brake pads for this year, but I think I was going to run G-lock. I know Kyle talked to them, and they had them kind of doing one compound up front, one compound in the rear. I think it was like R12 and R10.
Was it 12s 10s or was it 10s 8s?
I think it was 12 and 10s. I don't think there was any 8s, which is what kind of surprised me, because I thought maybe they would have done 10 and 8s.
Because I think I just got 8s all the way around for my car.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'd have to double check that, but
I thought the 8 was like their autocross kind of recommended, because it worked at 30 degrees up to like 700 and something degrees.
Right, which when I talked to the guy that I ordered them from, that's kind of what I told him, is like, because the thing is something to keep in mind, at least for the short term here, probably at least through this season, until I have enough money to buy Kimberly another fun car. Is this car
another one?
This car has to maintain good street manners. It has to be comfortable for her to drive. It has to be not embarrassing for us to take into the city somewhere, to be able to go slow
take to Door
through
County.
A busy town. We want to be able to go cruise a strip somewhere and not have the brakes go.
That's the best part.
It's great for people.
It's not broken.
Like, I hear a race car.
Yeah.
But 90% of the population are like, geez, man, you better get that checked out. So
no, I was looking at it.
I do think that I ended up with G8 R8s.
R8s. And I was even tempted running their like autocross spec, which they don't necessarily spec at autocross. That's my own classification based on the temperatures that they provided. Their autocross spec pad, I was even thinking of running it because it did go so high in its temperature range. I thought, okay, like I know Ryan and I, we like would take temperatures of the brakes and stuff, and you were at like 600 and some degrees. So
Sure.
like, it might be
pushing.
A little bit, but
the thing is pushing the limit or getting to, or maybe even a little past the limit on a set of G-Lock brakes that are rated for 700 degrees.
Right.
Is infinitely better than running parts store brands best.
Well, right.
Probably only rated for 4 or 5.
Well, the other thing that we, at least we have to compete with is our season will start in April.
Right. So we have
and it's March.
Large weather change here.
Right. So it could still be 40, 50 degrees when we start racing at best. And then we end in October. And like, I think it was last September actually, it was one of the coldest events we had.
Yeah,
it was like
pretty cold.
The high was 40 degrees for that day. And I tried to run slicks. That was
sketchy at best.
Well, the tire blankets worked.
Yeah,
there
did.
was that. The tire blankets
they
worked.
Definitely worked.
But
you still
there's only so much they can do.
Yeah. So it actually looks like the R8s actually have a max temperature of 1250 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, what's their low? 74. Okay, then it must have been the other ones that I was thinking of.
Probably
R6.
R6s.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, because I know I looked at the R8s and the R6s, and it was just kind of debating. Okay, yeah, there might be a couple cold days, but is it worth running those higher ones just to be safe on the high-speed autocross day, and then your first run, just take braking easy and get it up to temp, and then
which the R6s are rated from 0 degrees to 1,000. So they would be a fantastic street pad because you'd be good to go on that very first braking event.
Right.
You don't have to wait for them to heat up at all.
Right.
At least with the R8s, when you go into an autocross, the only thing you have to be concerned about is corner number 1.
Right.
Give it a little extra room on corner number 1 if it's a cold day out.
Right.
But it doesn't take anything at all to get a rotor to 74 degrees.
Right. Yeah, you got so much friction happening that it just... Well, we jumped from tires to brakes there pretty quick.
Hey, and that's all right. I mean, they're related. They both the same apparatus on the car.
Right. But that's just what drives me nuts when people do... and it's not just Z31s. It's any car. When people do big brake kits, and then they're running some all-season tire, and it's just like, why? Why didn't you try the simpler things first? Or, I don't know. You didn't really fix the problem, in my opinion. You just...
Yeah, I mean, I see it on hard park and S10s all the time.
Right.
One of the most popular brake swaps in the S10 community, which happens
C5,
almost exclusively on show trucks and nowhere near often enough on handling trucks.
Oh, CTSV brakes?
Like no, not CTSVs are a little bit different, so they're harder. But there's direct swap kits out there. Well, they take a little fabrication, but it's a common swap to do like C6 Z06 brakes.
Okay.
So.
And those are different than CTSV brakes.
They are. I don't know if they use the same mounting
bracket
or not.
Configuration.
If I remember correctly, talking to Frankie, they were different.
Okay.
Because that's what he's got on his Nova CTSV brakes.
No, he doesn't.
Did he? Oh, he switched to.
He got Willwoods.
He got the Willwoods.
And they are crazy light.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. But that's what he had. He actually purchased a set of CTSV.
That's right. Yep.
And because that's what he was going to run, and then he changed his mind. But yeah, there again, totally get it. Actually, if your main goal is to just build a show truck, you want your truck to look awesome, and you have 18 or 20-inch wheels on your truck, and you don't like blank space,
right.
You throw that huge 14-inch rotor. I think they're a 14-inch rotor with C6 Z06 brakes.
Yeah, I think it is 14-inch.
Throw a 14-inch rotor in there with a 6-pot caliper.
Right.
That fills up a 20-inch wheel a lot better than obviously a 9-inch rotor, a 9.5-inch rotor that is stock brakes, or a 12-inch rotor that is C5 brakes.
Just use brake caliper covers.
If the looks is all you're going for, then yeah, yes.
No.
Right. No.
All right, so you're gonna run the AO52s.
Probably not, but okay.
Kyle's gonna run the RT660s. I'm gonna run the undisclosed until we get here. You're running the AO52.
Probably not, but okay. And Kyle's gonna run the RT660s.
Yep. I'm gonna run the
undisclosed.
What?
Run an unnamed tire.
Yep. And Ryan's running the pros, which he ran a little bit last year, so we'll see how that goes. I don't know where Reed and Adam are gonna end up.
Reed's gonna go Drift-O on.
I think
Frozen 5.5s.
Yeah. I think Schaefer's gonna run the
RS Pros, right?
Yeah, I think he's gonna go to the pros.
Because he's kicking around getting different wheels also.
Is he still?
He's a little wishy-washy, but yeah, last I heard that he...
I was trying to talk him out of it the last time.
No, I know, because, there's other things that would be more beneficial at this point.
Right.
But, yeah.
One of the other things that we were playing with last weekend, I brought up the ride height sensor.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to use 4 ride height sensors to measure how the car compresses as you're driving it as a way to measure the downforce.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, but you would have to have a specific selected course or section of road, and you would kind of have to take like a ride height average.
Right, it is, yeah, but you only need like 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay.
Is what you need at whatever speed. But I'm hoping to do that. The ride height sensor I did get.
I thought you were going to like figure out whether or not your car is oversprung or undersprung based on track conditions.
No. What?
You're not going to change springs at the track?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Not yet.
Not yet. No, actually...
and then just basically record it with an Arduino or whatever.
Where did Kyle get his wing from? Is that 9 Lives Racing?
Yes. Yep. He got his
I want
new
to
wing
say
from 9 Lives Racing.
that he posted, or not Kyle, but 9 Lives Racing posted a little blurb about the amount of downforce that actually goes on a car compared to what the spring rates are for most cars, and that a spring rate change is generally not required for aero unless you have some sort of a car set up that has extremely high level of aero.
So I would need to look at
required.
I need to look at our Ryan's Excel sheet that he has for the suspension stuff.
Yep.
You can run, at least the way his is set up, it's all about changing the shock. It's not about, you can change other things obviously, but the big thing is at the end of it, it gives you a theoretical compression and rebound graph of what you want to match. So theoretically, you could input whatever your downforce is, put in whatever springs you want, and then it would give you a shock graph to try and meet. Now, whether that's actually achievable is the question.
Sure.
And maybe you need to change spring rates based on that.
Right.
But I can see where they're saying, yeah, no, it's not based on spring rate necessarily, because you're not adding weight to the car, but you're adding force down onto not the the springs are pushing back.
Yep.
But it's how do the dampers and how does your compression and rebound deal with? Because that's a big thing they say. If your car doesn't have aero, and you have to you're going to pick between one adjustability, you want to have rebound. But as soon as you start adding aero into it, then you want to be able to adjust compression.
Right. Which makes sense.
If I'm not mistaken. Yell at us in the comments if we're wrong.
Right.
That's territory for us. So
a little
I'm
bit.
just going off of
but we're working
the stuff that
Yep. But it was to my understanding that the simplest way to try and explain it, I guess, is think about a car that has a Mcpherson Strut style suspension front and rear, because that's the closest you can get to a 1-to-1 motion ratio.
No.
Outside of cantilever type suspensions.
No. Mine is like 0.87 to 1.
Which is not as close as a Mcpherson Strut gets.
Mine is a Mcpherson Strut.
Oh, well, okay. I'm sorry that yours sucks.
Oh, well, that is what Mcpherson Struts like just are. They're generally less than 1.
Right. But okay, I see what you're saying.
When your motion ratio would probably be more or closer to 1-to-1 if it was like a AA arm, right?
No. It just depends. Like a 1-to-1 means that your shock is directly over the ball joint. So for every 1 inch that the tire and wheel, which is approximately centered above the ball, around the ball joint, for every 1 inch that ball joint location goes up, or your wheel goes up, your shock compresses 1 inch.
Oh.
So yours is a 0.8, so it is, if you section your control arm out into 10 sections, it's on section number 8.
Right.
Is approximately where your strut is.
Right.
Like my S10, I think they're like somewhere around like a 0.6.
Oh, okay.
Because the shock is that much farther in on the control arm.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right.
So a Mcpherson Strut, generally, you can do weird stuff with cantilever suspensions and stuff like that and changing geometry for your shock ratios. But generally, a Mcpherson Strut is as close to 1-to-1 as you can get on most conventional style automotive suspension systems.
Right. If you've got a big tolerance of plus or minus 20,000.
Yeah. So if you have a wing on your car that makes 250 pounds of downforce and you have 400 pound per inch springs, that means that you're only going to compress the shock half, or the spring a half to 3/4 of an inch with your additional 200 pounds of downforce. It would actually be
Not
less than
necessarily.
that because it's split.
Not necessarily, because it's dependent on the compression of the shock.
No.
Yes.
No. Because your dampening does not, when you're going down the straightaway into turn 5 at Road America, that is not a dampening procedure. The dampening on the shock is not going to limit how much the suspension compresses from aero downforce on that straightaway, because that is a long.
Okay. Yep. No, sorry.
That is 100% spring related.
Okay.
So you're only going to compress the spring a half to 3/4 of an inch at most due to your downforce. So if your car doesn't have enough compliance in its ride height to allow for a half to 3/4 of an inch of lower ground clearance, you need to reevaluate your spring package to begin with.
Right. But how are you compressing this? I mean, with the Mcpherson Strut, if you're compressing the spring, you're compressing the damper as well. So you're working in compression.
Yes.
In the damper.
But the action of your aero compressing your suspension is not like going over bumps where it's going up and down in a quick motion or a moderately quick motion. It's a very long, drawn out. It only compresses as fast as you can accelerate. And generally speaking, most aero doesn't start making downforce until 30, 40 miles an hour.
That doesn't mean you don't have compression in the shock, because the compression is based on...
You do, but the motion is going to be so slow in force from your aero that the bleed rate on a compression stroke is going to be so slow that it's not going to matter.
It depends.
I don't think there's any cars that can accelerate quick enough that...
To compress
force cars.
No, I do get what you're saying.
Especially when, as I stated, we're only compressing it a half to 3/4 of an inch, probably, as long as your spring package is appropriate. You're only compressing it a half to 3/4 of an inch total between 0 miles an hour and 120 miles an hour. So, how long does it take you to go from 0 to 120? That's a very, very long duration for a shock stroke event to go 3/4 of an inch. It's not.
Okay.
It's not the type of dynamics.
No, you're right.
You're making a transition into a
you're right.
corner.
Okay. Nope, you're right. I see what you're saying.
Yep. So there's exceptions to those rules. Like if you're driving a tube chassis car, or something that is like full-blown absolute race car, where you only have 2.5 or 3 inches of ground clearance. But generally speaking, for people who are doing autocross, HPDEs, or high-speed autocross, cars that are driven on the street, generally speaking, whatever spring package you have designed to work with your car without aero will work just as adequately with aero.
But when you put aero on, you're going to try and make it as close to the ground as you possibly can.
You should make it as close to the ground as you possibly. If absolute track performance is your goal, you should make it as close to the ground as possible without aero first.
Well, yes.
Given, there's always things to consider when building an aero package for a car, but especially if you're the type of person who's running a specific budget and you're trying to build a car in stages and progress through time, you need to make the car 100% as good as possible without aero before you add aero. There's going to be a little bit of backtrack there. If you know for sure you're going to be running aero someday, there's certain things that you should take into account. Yeah. But generally speaking, the best a car can possibly be without aero will only get better with aero.
What is it they say? Run before you walk. Just jump into it.
This sounds
Just
like a measure once, cut twice situation.
A rule I live by. Which I never got that. Measure once, cut twice. Why isn't it measure twice, cut twice? Because you're going to have to measure again cut.
It really should be measure once, cut once, measure again, and then cut 2 or 3 more times.
Unless you're cutting oversized every time.
Which would be better.
Then you're still going to measure twice because you're going to measure.
But at least
never got that.
Product.
Never got that. God. What riveting and useless conversation.
But maybe it's a measure once, and then you cut it wrong the first time, so you got to scrap it and cut again. You got to start with a whole new blank.
That's true. But again, it's still measure twice, cut twice. Never got it. All right, you had one of the other things we wanted to talk about tonight was
the one vehicle that's popped across the radar.
Well, there's a little bit of generality to it. It's about how the manuals are disappearing. And we kind of covered this a little bit last time.
Manuals as in manual transmissions disappearing.
What else? What else were they thinking?
Haynes, Climber. People aren't buying those anymore. They're just using the Google. Sorry, power sports industry. Climber manuals. It's a brand just like Haynes.
I just thought you messed up Chilton.
Nope. Chilton is another one.
The other day, Reed was like, "Oh, you should get a Haynes manual for that." I was like, "You might not be able to." And he's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, they're getting rid of all they're done publishing, physical copies." He's like, "Oh, well, there's that other brand." He's like, "Oh, I can't think of the name." I said, "Chilton." He goes, "Yeah." I go, "They were bought out by Haynes." He goes, "Oh."
How unfortunate.
I was like, yeah, that's which I don't know if they have PDF versions or what they're doing, or if they're just done.
Right.
Which I could see them just being done, because it's obviously a lot of work to go through a car and
for sure
tear it apart and make those manuals. But yes, manual transmissions, to get back on point. How they're kind of disappearing, and we kind of covered this a little bit with the new GT86 that's coming out. The new Supra that came out, as well as the new Nissan Z car. Yep, with the Nissan Z car having a manual, it's kind of turning more and more into a rare breed to have a manual option even available. Especially as we've gone from 2 years ago to now, it feels like every car that comes out, it just doesn't have a manual. I mean, when the GTR came out and it didn't have a manual, everyone was kind of like, what are you doing? And now, I mean, even the Corvettes and everything, and I mean, it makes sense. You look at what the C7 Corvette, the amount of manuals they produce compared to automatics, and it's not really a wonder why they just phased it out completely.
Yep.
Especially with what the C8 kind of represents, being more of a. I don't think I would call the Corvette a muscle car in recent years, but it was in a weird area of muscle supercar.
Muscle car and
supercar, right? It was in a weird, I guess, and maybe I don't know if you'd call it a Grand Tour kind of car because it's the whole front engine, rear wheel drive kind of thing.
They have a package called the Grand Sport,
right?
Which is kind of a Grand Tour,
right. And so maybe that's a. I don't look at it, but I look at a Grand Tour as being soft, or not always soft, but it is soft, and then has the capability to be.
Yep.
A serious road car or whatever, which I don't. In my unlimited experience of never ever driving a Corvette other than a C4. Or at least riding in it. I can't remember if I've driven your C4 yet.
I don't think so.
I didn't think so.
You started it once in the driveway, but that was it.
Yep. And thank God. So I don't know exactly how they ride, but I guess I imagine them not being soft, comfy Grand Tours. So they're going from sports car to supercar with the C8, I guess is the way to go. And that C7 was that weird area. I mean, the C6...
They were in a weird spot because they have the muscle car layout. Front engine, rear drive,
right.
Lots of torque, and a manual transmission.
Right.
But then you transfer over, but the thing is about the C7 is that even though they were the muscle car style layout, they performed as well as a lot of exotics and supercars. They were very highly competitive,
right?
Well outside their class for what they were,
for their price range.
Yeah,
too. Like that was the big thing. I know you saw a couple reviews, and they're comparing it to the Porsche Cayman because that's the same price range. But realistically, if you were looking at it on a track, you would never put them in the same class together.
That would. C7 Z06 would be more compared to like a GT3 RS, but they cost like 4 times as much.
Right.
So, but then you jump up to the C8, and now all of a sudden you've got a mid-engine rear drive, paddle shifters, very supercar.
Right.
Very much supercar.
And so we're moving more and more away from that manual transmission, which is obviously something I don't like.
Right.
I get it. I get the performance aspects, yes, of a dual clutch transmission.
But I like to roll my own.
Yeah. It's not going to be stolen by.
Right. You like that millennial anti-theft device.
We're millennials.
I'm aware. I know a lot of people my age who can't drive a stick.
That's true enough. So, but no, you're right. That connection, which everyone already, what we're talking about. Don't really need to explain it for anyone who likes driving manuals.
Yep.
So we're seeing less and less. So it's kind of good. It's kind of nice to see. You still have the Mustang, at least GT. Is still a manual. The new Z car looks like it's going to be a manual. The GT86, even as slow as it is, it's a manual. You do have the Fiat 124 Abarth. You know what? Abarth. I'm just gonna call it Abarth.
Sounds like a soup name.
Yeah, exactly. Abarth. That's still manual. The Miata is still manual. I don't think the Miata will go away from being a manual. I think it would be a big mistake.
Yeah, if it ever became not a manual, it just wouldn't be Miata anymore.
The Z4, they have a manual option for that in the 4-cylinder configuration, I believe.
That's very possible. Not 100% sure.
I'll look and see if that's the case.
But then what we're getting to here is the one that kind of comes out of left field, and you didn't exactly expect to offer a manual option compared to most other companies that are kind of taking the manual to the wayside.
Right.
It's the Cadillac CT5V.
And 4.
And the 4, yep.
Yep. Which I believe the only difference is sedan and station wagon or kind of thing. It almost looks like the 5 is like a hatchback design, and the 4 is like a
I thought I was reading somewhere that they're gonna all. I think the 4 was like a Cooper sedan, and the 5 was a sedan or a wagon.
Okay.
I thought is what
I was just that was just a couple pictures that I saw.
Yeah.
I haven't.
But the 4 is supposed to have the 3.6 liter twin turbo motor, and
right.
the 5 is actually going to have a supercharged 6.2, which is supposed to come in at 650 horsepower, which is pretty typical for the bigger V cars.
All right.
I
want to go back to the Z4. They are going to offer it with a manual transmission.
Sure.
Or it is being offered with a manual transmission, but I don't have clarification here if it was made available for only the S-Drive 20i in 2019. So maybe you can't even get it anymore with a manual. Never mind. Scratch that.
You looking at old Z car or old?
No. It is. It's the new Gen Z4, but they only offered it in 2019.
Oh, that's 2 years ago.
From July of 2019, specifically a month in 2019, they offered it. I guess. Right. Never mind.
But even if BMW Z4 did have a manual option, it's a 2-seater convertible sports car. Everybody knows that a Cadillac V car is fast, but it's not a sports car.
Right.
So to see it come with a manual, it's just surprising and very welcomed to enough people.
They could have put it in a prettier car.
They're a little bit bulbous in the front end, I'll give you that.
That looks like a Chrysler 300.
Nope.
Yes, it does. That's all I see when I look at it.
You'll have to show me a
Chrysler 300.
Chrysler
Not that a Chrysler 300 would be bad with a manual. I just don't think it looks as good as a Chrysler 300.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
And not the old Chrysler 300.
I guess I'll say that I prefer the previous generation V cars.
Well, see, and that makes me wonder because I always thought the first gen V cars, and even probably second gen, and I don't even know what gen we're on now. I didn't think they were very pretty, and then now it's like, oh, I kind of like that whole very angular body style that they had going on.
Right.
So let me find the right one here, because you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's exactly the same thing. Let it load. All right. See?
Nope.
Yep. Are you kidding me? Identical.
To this?
That's not it, though.
Well, it is. It's a CT5 Blackwing. Maybe you're thinking of a CT4.
4. Maybe this is the 4. I didn't think the 5 looked any different than the 4, though.
Yeah, they're a completely different platform.
I guess they do look a little...
4 is smaller.
Well, I got that. In this picture, it looks a lot like a 300. It's got this stupid gaping grill.
No,
in the front. Yeah, it does. Has that section, that section, and then it's just got bigger headlights. But then
you got bigger headlights.
Well, you look at the shape of the body too.
Nope. That thing has a gigantic flat hood, and that one's got lines and rolling form all over the place.
Well, they're both just awful.
No. No.
They're the same that way.
Good try.
You can really tell me one looks better than the other?
Yeah.
Which one?
Depends on what your goals are, I guess.
What do you mean your goals? It's a Chrysler and a Cadillac. Your goals are limited.
No. If you want executive status, you drive the Cadillac. If you want baller status, you drive the Chrysler.
You have to elaborate because I...
You know, like, just baller status. Flat brims hats and gold chains and skater boy shoes, you're going to drive that.
Okay.
If you want to wear a suit and tie, you're going to drive the Cadillac. Those are facts.
That's,
There may be a small profiling going on here, but those are general facts.
I look at 300s. Like fake Bentleys. Like China Bentleys. China. And the caddies I just look at as overpriced Chevys. I don't know. Like it and now that I'm looking at it more, it kind of looks like the SS.
As it should, because it's probably on the same platform.
It probably is, but it I don't know. Not doing it for me.
To each his own.
Like I would still rather have,
like,
if they still offer the Focus ST, I would still rather have the Focus ST than this. If I had to pick a car with a manual transmission.
Okay.
And I was stuck between those two.
I would not do the same. I would pick that
once I drive it, maybe that'd be different. But
I would pick that Cadillac every single time.
It doesn't look that great.
But
it's got.
The thing is
I don't like its headlights.
Just a quick Google search here would suggest you're starting out at a base price of like $85,000 and like fully optioned out.
Oh, good. I don't even have to worry about it because I can't afford it.
You know, obviously, if I was going to spend that much money on a car, I can think of a lot of things that I would definitely prefer over that car.
Like a Viper.
But if there was only two manual cars left in the world, and one was a Focus ST and one was a CT5 Blackwing, I would buy the Blackwing every single time. Except for when I wanted to haul a Z32 hood.
Oh.
But not a rear hatch, though, because it won't fit.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I don't know, that would be hard for me. I really like my Focus.
And maybe you do, but you should probably drive one of those before you knock it. Other than a step.
If you're listening, and you've got a Cadillac you want us to test drive, we'd be more than happy to.
More than happy.
I don't get this thing with its headlights. Like, what's with the check mark on the side and then the tiny little headlight? Like,
maybe you need to look at something other than that one picture.
Okay, let me scroll down. Oh my gosh! Look how terrible that was.
That one should look terrible. It's in
prototype
urban camo.
Urban camo.
Yeah, you're looking at a CT4, not a CT5. So that picture you can see the brake and the light. One is actually like a daytime running light or a marker light. That one there, with them highly illuminated, it looks like they connect, but they actually.
So that's the CT4. That's
no. This is also a CT4. Wow,
no, it's a CT5. So the CT4 has a connected light. Look at that.
Well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. They should have just did it like a CT4.
All right, so the CT4 out, CT5
passable.
Well, see, that doesn't look too bad.
Yeah. You know,
I don't like the light though. The light really bothers me.
You realize, TJ, that you're doing the same thing as all those people that you were.
I was just thinking that they're bringing out
it's a manual car, but I hate the way it looks. Just like all the Z car people that were not Z cars.
There's one thing there that isn't in this. That this does not meet the category.
Don't you even dare say that it's a V6. Because that's not the important part.
It is
that
a
is
V6.
a V6.
Right. No, I'm not going down that road. it's not affordable. It's not.
You
It's
do realize
it's
that
not
that-
like
You do realize that is an extremely relevant term.
okay.
Because
My
I have a
the
legitimate
GT86
I have a legitimate thing here.
is an affordable car if you're buying a brand new car. It might not be.
It's a very relative term. Think about the extreme number of middle class people that are rolling around in brand new pickup trucks.
Right, but
because they choose to buy a pickup truck or an SUV when many of them don't need a pickup truck or SUV.
Right.
Just what they prefer to drive.
right.
So if they preferred to drive
but
Cadillac
a pickup
CT,
or an SUV, unless you're getting to the extreme range of like heavy diesels, does not cost $85,000.
That's what I'm saying though, is think about the extreme number of people that drive high-end pickup trucks and SUVs. How many Cadillac Escalades do they sell in a year? How many Ford Expeditions do they sell in a year? That's how much they cost. It is. They cost just as much as a full-size pickup truck.
Right, but the best-selling pickup truck is a half-ton.
That's the best-selling one. That doesn't mean that they don't sell a boatload of
Whoa!
other ones too.
My whole point is when people want an affordable rear-wheel drive manual sports car, something like the GT86, it gets just crapping, which I realize that is what I'm doing with this, but it's also,
I mean, there's
not
big differences here because they're kind of targeting two totally different markets. Because generally, the people who are requesting an affordable manual rear-wheel drive sports car,
can't afford it.
oh, well, there is that. Those are the people that complain about it.
Oh, yeah,
but
that's
the
right.
people who request it generally
I
want
can't afford it, and I'm complaining about it.
Right.
Jesus.
You are that
Oh my God.
But no, seriously though. Generally speaking, the people who request and desire a reasonably affordable rear-wheel drive sports car, they don't actually want 650 horsepower.
Right.
And they don't want a bunch of luxury options.
Right.
They want a manual rear-wheel drive sports car.
Right.
This just happens to appeal to a completely different market of people who want a rear-wheel drive sports car that also feels like riding on a luxury yacht.
Well, I wonder if it's one
And
of those
you get
things.
to row your own.
I wonder if it's one of those things where, I mean, like Mercedes, BMW, they don't offer any of that anymore.
Generally, no. Well, I mean, manual transmission specifically you're talking about?
Like in their sport-based sedans,
Right.
they don't offer a manual anymore.
Right.
So, and no one does really. Not that I can think of that offers
Yeah,
a
not
sport-based
very many.
sedan that's a manual. So I guess I can see why they would maybe do it. I don't know. I probably need to see one in person before I judge it too much on its looks, because I didn't think Z31s looked good at all when I saw them in pictures. Then I saw one in person, and then
Right.
I bought one. Wow, it only took me one episode to completely contradict myself.
This is going to be an interesting journey. You speak about what would be considered kind of direct competition to that car there, the CT5V, for example.
Right.
2021 actually marks the return of the Bmw M3. So they had discontinued in 2018 after they came out with the M4, but I haven't seen or heard any exact reasons why they decided to come back with an M3. Probably just from the public outcry and rage.
Yeah.
That they
Why did you get rid of it and do an M4?
They discontinued the most iconic BMW that there's ever been.
Right.
And but for 2021, they're supposed to have a new one coming back. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that pans out.
Hopefully we get a little bit more information on it. by the time we do our next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's very, very young in its release.
Right.
Hopefully, that'd be amazing. It'd be great if it had a manual transmission again.
That would be great. It's got a rough face, which I'm starting right down the same path that I was just
Here we go again. But, I mean, in all honesty, the grill openings look very similar to, like an X5? The SUVs with the...
Yeah, like the new X5s that they come out with.
And the 5 Series cars.
Yeah, their new grill style.
Huge bulbous openings on the grills. And I have seen those in person. Obviously, I haven't seen the M3. But I've seen the other late model BMWs in person, and it's just too much grill. Got to close that up a little bit. Give me a little more painted plastic. But, you know, it's one of those things where even if you look at it the first time and you're kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that. But then you get to put your butt in the seat and go for a rip, and you're kind of like, you know what, this doesn't look that bad.
Right. You go for a rip, it makes you feel great, and then you get outside and you're like, oh, I love the way this car looks. All right, well, I guess we should wrap things up. Just kind of review. Tires you no longer need to worry about, or never needed to worry about to begin with, include the Bridgestone RE711R, the Falcon, is it R615K Plus, Dunlop Z3,
Kenda Kaisers, unless you're going drifting.
Kenda Kaisers, Hankook RS4, Nexen, and Surf 4G, whatever it is. Nitto NTO5s and Maxxis VR1s, which I'm sure everyone knew about. Great tires to look at: Yokohama AL52, Falcon RT660, BF Goodrich Rival, Kumo V730, which we haven't. That's one we're still waiting information for.
Yeah.
Same with the Name King CR1. Budget options: Federal 595 RS Pro or RS RR. And then there's that one disclosed tire, or undisclosed tire that we'll bring up hopefully next time. And manual cars, when they come out, people need to be respectful. Unless I don't like it, then you can trash it. That's what we've learned from the Cadillac escapade. And hopefully we'll see some more developments with this new M3, and we'll see how it turns out with design, and hopefully it has a manual transmission, following the great Nissan steps, hopefully.
And hopefully next episode we'll have some updates on our own personal cars as well.
Yeah, there's I think there's some pretty big updates coming along.
Yep, got a few things in the work. Nothing really noteworthy worth sharing right at this moment, but things in the wings.
Yep. Hopefully we get some testing done with the ride height sensors and aero, like we brought up. That'll be kind of interesting to play with. If we've got some video to show from that, we'll definitely share that here. But until next time, thanks for joining us, and this has been Hammered with Cars with TJ and Tyler.